Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college football. The college football playoff bracket is officially set. 12 teams in the field as we got a Mountain West team, two ACC teams, some SEC schools, a couple Big Ten teams, and one Big 12 team to go along with this 12-team expanded playoff format for the first time ever. A whole lot of good stuff there. Can't wait to talk about these matchups. We're going to have some playoff games at some home fields. That's right. These universities in the first round are going to be hosting a playoff game, which is going to be the first time pretty much we've seen this in this era of college football. So I can't wait to talk about the matchups and get to all of that. But hey, it was week 15 of the regular season. Some conference championship games, some high leverage ones. Obviously, the ACC, the Mountain West championships, some big ones. The SEC one had a whole lot of volume to it as far as SEC champion and how the seeding was going to go on the top between Georgia and Texas. But we also got some of the smaller tier conferences, some good feel good stories out in Conference USA and the American Athletic Conference with the Army Black Knights. So let's talk about these conference championship games before we officially break down all of these college football playoff matchups because we're going to spend a whole lot of time on that. But I just want to give my thoughts on some of the under the radar teams that had some really good seasons because Conference USA was not a good conference for the league overall. A lot of snoozers on those Tuesday and Wednesday nights that I imagine that a lot of people watch because they were on national TV. But man, we're not going to lie here, folks. That was not some pretty football overall this year. But hey, the conference championship game was a blowout between Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State, but Jacksonville State had a terrific season this year. One of the more under the radar, feel good stories, I would say, in all of college football this year because this was the best team in Conference USA. You watched this team all season long in Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks, coached by Rich Rodriguez, who's had several Power 4 jobs and Power 5 jobs over his long career, but comes over to Jacksonville State, kind of restarted the program. First year at FBS in 2023, took them to like 7 victories, won their first ever game versus UTEP at the FBS level. And this year, they just hit the ground running with Tyler Huff and Trey Stewart. Trey Stewart at running back, Tyler Huff at quarterback. And man, we already know Rich Rod, he likes to have that no huddle, heavy dosage of the run game, that ground attack with a little bit of the spread offenses. It's pretty lethal out there in Jacksonville, Alabama, and pretty much everywhere he's been. But man, this Jacksonville State team, man, they were just a fun watch. If you like to watch some good run game, and that's pretty much what we got all year from this team. Absolutely demolishing Western Kentucky, 52-12. This was a no contest from the start. I thought this was a bad matchup for Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky, man, I will say this, they're in Conference USA, but man, Tyson Helton has done a terrific job with that program the past couple of years. Offensive coordinator Zach Kittley, who's got that pretty much that heavy air raid attack that he's been running with all those different quarterbacks, Bailey Zappi, Austin Reed. That wasn't necessarily the case this season with Caden Veltkamp. It was a whole lot more of run game. Wasn't that as explosive as years past, where they would pretty much hang like 52 a game, but not the case this year, man. Helton did one heck of a job with this group, and I'm interested to see what that group looks like next year because Zach Kittley departs for the Florida Atlantic head coaching gig. So maybe a little change of scenery, maybe a change of offense, maybe not as, guns blazing as we're used to seeing out there in Bowling Green, Kentucky. But man, Jacksonville State, they tore these guys apart. This was a game I imagine for most people they turned off at the second quarter. But man, Jacksonville State, I mean, Trey Stewart, 200 plus yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns on 27 carries. Tyler Huff at quarterback, 176 passing yards, 167 rushing yards. He had 3 touchdowns overall on the ground through the air. And man, what more can we say? But Jacksonville State with a 9-win season, conference champion. And yeah, the game was a bloodbath, but Jacksonville State, best team in the conference overall. And these two teams actually played the previous week, and Western Kentucky needed the game. Jacksonville State didn't need it because they already clinched the conference championship game. WKU won on a game-winning field goal versus Jacksonville State's backup quarterback, Logan Smothers. And you could tell Rich Rodriguez was just not trying to expose as much, trying to keep it vanilla and, really have a closed door policy on everything he was trying to do. Not trying to reveal too much for the big game at home versus in Jacksonville, Alabama. But overall, great season for the Gamecocks and Western Kentucky, man. I think this could be a contender in Conference USA every single year. But again, this league not very good. Without a doubt, the worst league from top to bottom at the FBS level. The American Athletic Conference between Tulane and Army. The Army was ranked top 25 in this one, 24th in America. I mean, the Army Black Knights have just had a terrific season with Bryson Daly and their running back Udo, 11-1 overall after they demolish the Tulane Green Wave 35-14. I mean, Tulane, one of these teams, again, they had a bunch of roster turnover themselves. New coach Pat Summerall came over from the Troy Trojans, did a terrific job in Troy, Alabama. First year in Tulane, I mean, Tulane has kind of, built that, has kind of gotten some respect now within, the group of five ranks now, where they've done a whole lot of winning. Willie Fritz did a whole lot of winning. I mean, he only beat USC in the Cotton Bowl a couple of years ago. And, Tulane was kind of one of these teams. They were kind of at the at-large potential for the college football playoff. But they on Thanksgiving Day, they laid an egg versus the Memphis Tigers. Memphis in the AAC this year, all offense, no defense. Tulane didn't show up in that game, and they needed they needed a UNLV win and probably a blowout versus Army to make the playoff. That obviously didn't happen. They lost the conference championship game by 21. But man, Army, just what a great story this year. Bryson Daly. I mean, we've seen Army just this season. They've thrown it a whole lot more with the explosives. With Bryson Daly, I think Bryson Daly has like the most touchdowns. Like he's responsible for the most touchdowns in college football. I could be wrong with that, but man, with Daly at quarterback, Udo at running back, that was just a lethal. That was just a lethal bunch. And I know they didn't play anybody this year. Like everyone was talking about them, like they had the second worst strength of schedule in all of college football with behind Liberty this year, but still. I mean, Army, they had a 10-11 win season. They get to play Navy this week. I mean, just a great story. We have to acknowledge that. And, Tulane, I think Tulane is going to be a threat for years to come here. Pat Summerall, I mean, even if Summerall leaves in a couple of years, they'll find the next dude in the Sun Belt and he'll be happy to take the job and they'll just keep it going here. That's kind of how you have to be at the group of five level at the AAC, if you will. So both of those, Army, great story, but I think Tulane, they're legit. They're gonna be there for a couple years to come. I mean, heck, they got Mario Williams on that roster this year, transfer out of USC, was like a 5-star guy. So Tulane will have no problem recruiting down there in New Orleans, but Army, the AAC champion, the Mountain West. Then to wrap up the three-game Friday conference championship slate, Boise State versus UNLV. This one had a whole lot of volumes. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty, Heisman Trophy candidate, finalist now. He did his thing in this one. 21-7 Boise State wins, but man, he finally popped one of those big runs. He didn't have one of those massive runs versus UNLV this year in the regular season matchup in Vegas, but Jeanty, 32 carries, 209 yards, and a touchdown on the ground versus the UNLV Rebels. UNLV was the best rushing defense in the Mountain West this year. And that was a feisty bunch. Like, nobody could run on this team. And, I mean, they had to run Jeanty down to the ground in that regular season game, and they kept him under 150 yards, which is a W when you're playing against Ashton Jeanty. So, UNLV way more overwhelmed in this one. Obviously, going to the cold on the Smurf turf in Boise, Idaho in December is not ideal. I think that was kind of the big case for me there was, are the Las Vegas boys really going to be ready for this one? I don't know. Of course, they're going to be ready, but the elements and the home field advantage and just the way Boise State was so hungry to get to the college football playoff, they knew what they had to do, and they did it. And I think Boise State was just much better in that one. Obviously, UNLV couldn't run the ball. What really impressed me was Boise State's defense. I mean, just the push that they were getting on the line of scrimmage, where they have like 6-7 sacks in this game, like unbelievable. Ahmed Hassanin was great. Marco Notriani, Ty Benefield filling in for Alexander Tubner the past couple weeks. He's just been terrific, like just all around. That team and that defensively, you've seen some improvements on the Boise State Bronco defense over the past couple weeks. When a San Jose State team kind of exposed them, and some other teams have kind of figured out the puzzle. Man, they really peaked at the right time here, and this is the best I think this defense is playing right now from start to finish. They're peaking at the right time. This offense, man, they're in the college football playoff. They got the bye. We'll most certainly talk about that. But a lot of people are going to be containing Ashton Genty, rightfully so. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's going to be a first round draft pick in the NFL. He's been my vote for the Heisman Trophy. I know I don't have a vote in that thing, but he's getting my vote if I did have a vote. And he's just been unbelievable. He's like 140 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' all-time rushing record in college football. And he's been great, obviously, but Maddox Matson, see, here's the deal. So all the attention goes on Ashton Genty, and Maddox Matson's kind of like, okay, like he's not going to get any of the credit, but he needs to because he's just going out there and doing his job. Like he hasn't really turned it over that much. Sure, he might have some of the incompletions where he just throws it away, but his chemistry with Matt Lauder, the tight end, is great. He just if they have a 3rd and 7, they'll find a way to convert it to Caples or Camper. Prince Strawn's been in and out of the lineup, but he always seems to have one or two big catches in a game. So that is a lethal unit as well. I know everyone wants to talk about Genty, but Maddox Matson, if when he needs to make a throw, he will make a throw in the fourth quarter. And I think for Boise State's sake, and I think some the opposition as well, they're gonna figure that out in the playoff where go ahead, sell out to Genty. Matson can hurt you as well. And Matson has had some good games, some under the radar games, I would say, this season. He had that fourth quarter in versus UNLV this season where he just went down and managed the game properly and drilled the clock for 8 minutes and ultimately never gave UNLV the ball back. The game in San Jose I thought was a big one for him where he made a bunch of big throws, a bunch of third down conversions, third and longs they were converting. So Maddox Matson, Boise State fans, and I think the college football world for the amount of attention Boise State is getting, they gotta give some credit to Maddox Matson as well. Let's go to the Saturday games. The MAC championship. I'm gonna be completely honest. I didn't get too many eyes on this one between Ohio and Miami, Ohio, because I had my attention on the Big 12 game, even though the Big 12 game was a blowout. So was this one. 38-3, the Ohio Bobcats win. Here's the thing about the MAC. The MAC is probably the most, I would say, random conference in all of college football. Like there was never a repeat winner in this league. I think it's like 5 conference champions. There's been 5 different conference champions the past 5 years. So nobody repeats in this league. Miami, Ohio won the league last year. That's why I was kind of like, this might be Ohio's year. And they haven't won a conference championship since like the 60s, I believe. And Parker Navarro, Ohio Bobcat quarterback, just coming in and doing his thing. I mean, they really game managed that one pretty well. And Miami, Ohio's defense was just on the field the whole game. I mean, they only had 2 possessions in the first half. So Ohio was just drilling the clock, and they were drilling the clock and scoring touchdowns. I mean, they had a 21-3 lead at halftime. And I could tell you right now, I knew the game was over personally. But man, Ohio, we'll tip your cap. You had a great season. Parco Navarro played great. Ohio defense stepped up big time. In Miami, Ohio, Brett Gabbert had himself a great season. I mean, look, they won. Miami, Ohio went on like a 5, 6 game heater down the stretch. They had a terrible start to the season. Should have won a lot of one possession games early in the season. I think they had like a one possession loss at Cincinnati. Like they had some bad luck and some bad fortune early on in the season, but they caught fire, got to the championship game. Ohio and Tim Albin, who's now at Charlotte, believe it or not, now with his head coaching gig, just a little bit better when it mattered most. Let's go to the Big 12 championship game that took place in Jerry World, Arlington, Texas, between the Arizona State Sun Devils and the Iowa State Cyclones. To me, this was on paper probably the toughest game to pick on the board because Arizona State, dream season, Iowa State, I would say dream season. They were a contender heading into the preseason, but man, I just couldn't wait to watch this one. Arizona State wins 45 to 19. Didn't have that on my bingo card at all. I mean, Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo at offensive coordinator. What a season out there in Tempe, Arizona. I mean, the Arizona State not only win the Big 12, not only were they picked last in the Big 12 to finish in the regular season, they went 11-2 overall. Like unbelievable. This is without a doubt like the best story in college football this year. Probably like, whoa, this really happened this season. Like Arizona State won the Big 12. The Big 12 in a season where obviously revamped with all the conference realignment stuff, but I mean, you just throw a dart and pick a team on who was going to win this league, and ends up being the team that no one expected, probably except the coaching staff and the players out there in the Arizona State locker room probably thought they had a chance to win the league. So Cam Scatterbo, running back, I know he's making a whole lot of headlines, a whole lot of love on Twitter, rightfully so. Came from Sac State, transferred from Sac State, was just an absolute bulldozer over there, and pretty much did his thing on the big stage all season long. I mean, this guy's become a fan favorite in college football this year. What he did this game, 16 carries, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Ashton Genty's hard to bring down, and Ashton Genty is much smaller than Cam Scatterbo, but Cam Scatterbo is might be just as difficult to bring down, if not even more, quite honestly, because that guy, man, is just an absolute freak. Like that guy just wants to go every single time he gets the ball at the mesh point. He just wants to go and run somebody over. That guy's going to be in the NFL for damn sure. And I'm just going to say this. Arizona State, this team is a wagon because it's not all Cam Scatterbo, and I know their star wide receiver Tyson is out, but Sam Leavitt, man, that at quarterback, this guy was like the third string quarterback at Michigan State. He transfers to Arizona State, wins the job over Jeff Sims at the quarterback position to start the year. And this guy is out here making plays. Like, who had this in their bingo card? And it seems like every single time he takes off on like a third and long or a fourth and short, or it's always a big play. It's always a momentum changing play. We've seen it all season long here if you've been watching Arizona State. And that defense is feisty as well, obviously holding Iowa State to 19 points. But wow, that is a fun team to watch. What a head coaching job Kenny Dillingham has done this year. Then he might win Coach of the Year, quite honestly. Wouldn't be shocked at all. He totally deserves it. And he's one of those guys. He's just a young head coach, perfect for the college game, especially the way things are now with this whole transfer portal and NIL stuff. He encourages storming the field, which I personally like. Like, you want to talk about he's like a college kid himself on the sidelines, and I love that. You kind of need a personality guy. You could tell the kids buy into him, and you could tell that. I mean, Arizona State's probably gonna be a transfer portal destination now. And they're gonna keep getting players as long as he's there for the job that he's done. As for Iowa State, I mean, your heart breaks for these guys that they didn't win a conference championship game. I mean, this is like the second time in the last 4 to 5 years. I know they lost the conference chipper versus Oklahoma in like 2020, 2021, when Brock Purdy of all guys was at the quarterback position. They lost that one. They lose this one. I mean, kudos to Rocco Beck for coming back in the game there. I mean, he got absolutely drilled. I couldn't believe he came back in the fourth quarter. The game was over. We all knew that, but he still wanted to go out there and fight for for his team. That's going to get a whole lot of respect from the locker room, and a lot of those guys are going to probably come back next year. I mean, they still with Hanson at running back and a whole lot of other pieces on the wide receiver position and that defense that was good all season. Like they only have like 10 seniors on this team, so they're going to be a contender in the Big 12 next year, but that's tough because I know they haven't won a conference championship since like the 1920s, which I mean, I don't care who you are, you always root for teams that who haven't won a conference championship or just haven't had any sort of like big trophy, had any sort of a big time winning late in the season when it matters the most. You root for those teams, but Arizona State, I mean, I honestly didn't really care who won that one because they were going to deserve it either which way. SEC championship, Georgia Texas. Man, was this game probably a snoozer to some early, but a game that delivered in the end. Georgia beat Texas 22-19. Obviously, Texas their first year in the SEC, but this is a roster that can compete in the SEC, obviously, with Texas Longhorns ranked second in the country heading into this game. Georgia ranked fifth. Georgia, by any means, hasn't looked like what we've known to be in the past couple of years. I mean, their defense is still really good, but not as good as years past when they won those national championships. Their offense, I mean, they still have Arian Smith, but man, you could tell they miss guys like Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers who are in the NFL now, and they've gone through some running backs as well. They still have Trevor Etienne, but man, this game was just exactly what I expected it. An SEC low scoring grudge match, and who's going to make less mistakes, and the game went to overtime, and it was crazy because it was 6-6 at halftime, and everyone was complaining about the penalties, and then Carson Beck goes out due to injury, and you're like, wow, how is Georgia going to grind this one out? Well, I will say this, and really the breakdown for me was very simple on this game was who are you going to trust in a big game, Steve Sarkisian or Kirby Smart, who's been there before. And I know Kirby hasn't won like these SEC championship games. Like Alabama was always in the way for him. But in this matchup, I really liked him because he was going to find a way to make less mistakes in this one, manage the clock better, and, ultimately, will his team to a win. And we saw that when Gunnar Stockton, the backup quarterback, came in because when Carson Beck went out due to injury in the final second of the half, like just so unlucky. Now he's got a UCL elbow injury. Who knows what his status is for the playoff? But Gunnar Stockton comes in and he just comes in and manages the game well. Man, granted, they didn't have him do all that much, and the one pass that he actually threw downfield ended up getting picked late, which caused a whole lot of drama in the fourth for Texas to ultimately tie the game. But a whole lot of Trevor Etienne, a whole lot of just dump downs, just the simple stuff to get Texas off their game and stretch out the field. Georgia did that. You got to credit Kirby Smart there. He knew what he had in his personnel. He knew his personnel there, and I worry about Georgia maybe during the playoff time for what they're gonna have to deal with if Carson Beck's not healthy because say what you want about Carson Beck. I know everyone's got his own opinions on him and all of that stuff, but you're going to want Carson Beck in a playoff game because unless Gunnar Stockton decides to, pull a Houdini act and show what he didn't show on tape in that second half versus Texas, Georgia might have an uphill battle offensively. They're going to have to win a game a certain way, keep it low scoring, and they're going to have to find a way to grind it out with ETN in the ground attack because there's going to have to be probably a whole lot of bubble screens and things along those lines if Georgia wants to win, and their defense is going to have to keep them in it. But Texas, they're in it. They're in the playoff. Quinn Ewers didn't play great. I know everyone was calling for Arch Manning to come into the game and see what he has, but those wide receivers, man, with Moore, I know Moore had the explosive. Golden was great in this game. Golden's been great all year. Silas Bolden, and that guy, I saw him at Oregon State last year, and he was kind of deep in the depth chart to start the season, but he emerged in this game. Isaiah Bond, I mean, the list just goes on of the wide receivers that they got. Brett Auburn was kind of Bert Auburn was kind of the story in that one where he made the kick to force overtime. But man, if you make those kicks earlier in the game, we probably don't have overtime. So I think Texas is probably going to win a playoff game, probably. But if you trust them long term, I don't know. I personally can never buy into Texas long term, just because I don't want to say just because they're just Texas, but there's always a team that's better than them. There's always a coach. They always find well, they will find a way to get out coached in the big game. We saw that. I mean, Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer tore them apart in the semifinal game last year, and Texas is a really good team. They got a whole lot of great players, and Matthew McConaughey on the sideline is always a show when the camera gets on him. So you know, Texas, big brand, a great football team, but I think ultimately that there's a ceiling with this team as well. And their schedule really didn't impress me. What's their best win on their schedule this year? A win at College Station versus Texas A&M. So I don't know. I have my opinions about Texas, but Georgia just grinded it out and won the SEC. Credit to them. The Sun Belt championship game. Wow, there was a whole lot of storylines heading into to this one that were a lot completely under the radar. I feel like maybe not entirely, but hey, Louisiana and Marshall played in this game. The Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. Louisiana had a great year, and I thought that was completely under the radar for what they did. I mean, their best, I guess, quote unquote win was a win at Wake Forest, but this was a team where, man, they looked really good offensively to start the season. The problem was is that their starting quarterback Ben Wooldridge had a broken collarbone a couple weeks ago, and their backup Chandler Fields, who's been in college football forever, was still getting W's in the win column, but the offense wasn't really what it was. And then Fields came into the conference championship game versus Marshall, and then he got hurt, and then they were stuck on their third quarterback with Daniel Beal. And Marshall's a feisty defense. They caught fire at the right time. Marshall had a whole lot to play for in this one because their head coach Charles Huff actually didn't get a contract extension from Marshall, which I find unbelievable because this was a guy that won as a 3 touchdown underdog 2 years ago versus Notre Dame. And this is a guy that had a 32-20 overall record in Huntington and with the Marshall Thundering Herd. I mean, what more do you want? And he packed his bags, and Southern Miss, a Sun Belt rival, ended up giving him a contract extension. So you already knew quarterback Braylon Braxton and the rest of the crew, that defense, were going to play hard for him. They did. I think they got some good fortune in this one that Louisiana had some quarterback issues, more so with the injury bug. But Marshall, man, great story. They went 31-3, and they're probably going to get hit hard by the portal. By the way, their new head coach now, NC State defensive coordinator Tody Gibson. So we'll see how that goes out there in Huntington. But Charles Huff is a great coach for the Sun Belt at the Group of Five level, and Marshall wins the Sun Belt. Good for them, and good for the Thundering Herd. Unfortunate for Louisiana because they were a team that I was keeping an eye on all year, and they were dominant in the Sun Belt, and then the injury bug just hit them at the wrong time, specifically at the quarterback position. Let's go to the Big Ten championship game, and we'll save the ACC for last because that was, to me, the main event of the night. But this game also got a whole lot of eyeballs and and a whole lot of scoring on the board with Penn State and Oregon. Oregon's been the best team in college football all year, if you ask me. I mean, they got wins over Ohio State and a 3-point win over Boise State, which is pretty important now. But they just been the most dominant team from top to bottom this year, I feel like. I mean, first year in the Big Ten, they go out and they were in some tricky environments. I know Wisconsin and Minnesota, not the biggest gauntlet in the world, but still, it's Big Ten country, and a lot of those teams, when they went across 2 time zones, didn't do too great. Oregon, man, 45-37. This is the thing about Oregon. Like they're gonna put up a lot of points, but if they have to, they could win ugly as well. Like even when things aren't going right, they can still go out and do their thing. Dylan Gabriel to me is, he's not gonna win the Heisman. Who knows what his future looks like as far as NFL? He'll probably get a look, no doubt. But this guy is just like the guy you want, like for like just to run your system at the college football level, no matter where it is. I mean, what he's been doing this season, he's just been efficient. Outside of the first couple weeks where he was still trying to get the kinks out of the shoulder. Obviously, I mean, like a touchdown win over the Idaho Vandals, 3-point win versus Boise State. Like you could tell he was just still trying to get the system figured out there and trying to build some rapport with his wide receivers. But Tez Johnson's unbelievable. 11 catches, 181 yards, and a touchdown in this one. And Jordan James at running back is explosive. Whittington, the backup, is great. Like defensively, they're always good. They're gonna always get the recruits as well. So that is just a logjam of great players to come that are waiting in line. This year's unit is great. They're the favorite to win the playoff, if you ask me. We'll digest the bracket here in a bit, but to me, I think they're the favorite in this thing, and we'll see where that goes. But I mean, I never thought they were going to lose this game versus Penn State because we all know the deal with Penn State and James Franklin. He can never win the big game. And I was like, whoa, okay, they're getting some explosives here with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. It's like, okay, here we go. Like this is the running back tandem where if they're gonna win, this is what they're gonna have to do. Those two combined for 229 yards on the ground. Drew Aller, I mean, look, Penn State and these quarterbacks that they get, like there's always a ceiling with these guys. And for me, Penn State, I just it's hard to buy into them every single year. Like, sure, you could beat Kent State and Akron and the worst teams in America and inflate your ratings and all of that stuff and just the score overall. But once when you play one of the best team in the Big Ten and just overall, like once when there's a team that's better than them, like Ohio State on paper is better than Penn State. Oregon is better than Penn State. Like if there's a team on paper that is better than Penn State, they're going to lose. And that's just the fact of the matter. I mean, Drew Aller had a chance. He was down 8 in this game and he had a chance to go drive down the field and score a touchdown in a 2-point conversion and potentially force overtime and win the conference, but he threw a crucial interception late. So that was brutal for the Nittany Lions. They're in the playoff, but I don't know. I feel like a team like we'll talk about them in SMU could very well beat him. I know it's at Penn State, but man, they're a tough team to buy into as far as big picture every single year. And they're a proud program. They got the players and stuff, but there is always a ceiling with that team, and until proven otherwise, my opinion stands on that. Clemson and SMU, man, what a game this was. I mean, this was the main event to me. I had my eyes on this one a lot. I've been on the SMU pony wagon since pretty much the start of the year, with Rhett Lashley at head coach, Kevin Jennings at quarterback. I mean, look, SMU, man. So they make this move to the ACC. They're initially in the American. This is why you make the move, right? Like to get into the college football playoff in a year like this year, right? You're in the Power Four. You're in the Power Four league now. So the competition's going to be there. Everyone wants to talk about their strength of schedule. Yes, it wasn't great. I mean, what's their best win this year? Like they lost to BYU. That was their only loss. And they had 6 turnovers at Duke and still won in overtime. And yes, they lose this game 34-31. The start for them was horrendous. You couldn't get any worse. Kevin Jennings throws a pick. He gets strip sacked and fumbled. It's 14-0 like 4 minutes into the game. Clemson thinks they're going to run away with this, and everyone's like, okay, Alabama's just put them in at this point. And then Rhett Lashley, Kevin Jennings, Brashard Smith, and the boys just went and did their thing. And they rallied the troops with their up-tempo offense and a whole lot of no huddle in the process, and they just went and came back. And, that second half was really dominant by them. This is the problem I have with Clemson. Clemson's going to wins a lot of games every single year. They went 10-3 and they ultimately win the ACC. You could think Syracuse, by the way, Clemson. But Clemson, this is a team where they're going to put up points and they're going to look good for a quarter, a half, maybe 3 quarters. But man, this is a team that's going to get stuck in neutral when it matters. We saw that in the second half of this game, man. Like Garrett Riley, sometimes like this offense just sputters. And I know they had themselves a big injury with Haynes. Moffitt was still in, but still, like their offense changed there. Once when that injury, that's expected. But this is a team where Clemson very well coached. Dabo Sweeney has his beliefs on the transfer portal, and hey, I'm going to recruit you, and I expect you to be here for 4 years. And when it's your time, you're going to play and you're going to deliver. And he's stuck by that, ideology, and it's working, right? Like he won the ACC. Yes, he got some help along the way, but he's a conference champion, and he's in the college football playoff now. But I don't know. This is a team where it seems like every week. Like they had this versus South Carolina. And I know South Carolina SEC team, great defense, just great team overall. Lenora Sellers is a beast. But like it just seems like they just get stuck in neutral at the wrong time. And then a team like SMU that plays fast and up tempo just comes storming right back. And all of a sudden, things are sideways. And they made the play when it mattered. They got the special teams. They had the special teams play, and then they hit the one dump down to get it into field goal range for a game-winning 57-yard field goal. But me personally, for a guy that's been on the SMU bandwagon all year long, when they had that two-quarterback system with Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone, the fact that Rhett Lashley committed to his guy, Kevin Jennings, go run this thing, ultimately the right decision if you ask me. And he just came out. This was a team that, despite all the adversity that they had early, trailing, getting, absolutely demolished in the first quarter. I mean, they trailed 24-7 at halftime. And the fact that they came back and tied it 31-31, I mean, that drive was just killer in the fourth quarter with Jennings and Brashard Smith and all the third down conversions and unbelievable stuff. That's a fun team to watch. I mean, Brashard Smith at running back. This is a guy that came over from Miami. He played wide receiver. First year at the running back position. He's got like over 1,200 rushing yards. And it was funny. Sean McDonough, the play-by-play guy on the game out there in Charlotte for the ACC championship game, he mentioned on the broadcast, like, hey, Smith didn't even know what the A gap was. Like just crazy stuff there. Like the transformation that he had. Rhett Lashley's one hell of a coach. Kudos to SMU for extending him because he very well could have darted elsewhere. He probably still could. Who knows? But I will say this: Rhett Lashley is one heck of a coach that needs to be in the conversation for. He needs to be in the conversation of coaches that we talk about. He's a young guy, still up and coming. But man, that is a guy. If you're an offensive player, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, even defensively, they play hard. And I think their defense is underrated personally. Like that is a team that me personally, I would just want to play for because not only are they a fun team, but they seem like they got themselves a good culture there. And SMU, new team, coming over from the AAC to the ACC, and they're in the college football playoff. So great story. That second half comeback really ultimately got them into the playoff. I mean, I know they lost the championship game, but they made the conference championship game, and they only lose by 3. That second half showed you that they deserve to be in the playoff, and I'm glad they made it in. So SMU made the playoffs, and I know there's a bunch of people arguing that Alabama should have been in, but Alabama should have never been in. In fact, I don't think they should have even been really even considered in this whole playoff because I don't care if you play in the SEC. SMU is an ACC team. And if we're going to go down that route, okay, we're going to value the Power Fours and this and that, and we're going to do all of that. Whatever, that's fine. I'm quite honestly glad that a team like Boise State in the Mountain West is even getting in because we would be doing this 12-team playoff if we didn't even consider this format, this new expanded format. I'm shocked they even decided to have a group of 5 team in. But We get the group of five team in, so whatever. SMU and Alabama was the big argument, quote unquote, on who should be in after SMU lost. And really, I don't think there's any argument. Now, the committee ultimately made the right decision, but we know the committee is all wacko over the years. History has shown that the committee has done some bad stuff. Now, everyone could argue the Florida State stuff last year. That's fine. But SMU made the conference championship game. If you make the conference championship game, there has to be some sort of value into that, whether you win or lose. Now, if you lose the game and you get demolished, then there's some different considerations here that we have to have. There's the conversation gets a little bit more lengthy, and then we have ourselves a little bit more of an argument. If SMU would have gotten smashed by 24, I don't know. What does the committee do there? But SMU came back, made it one possession, tied the game. Clemson made a play. So I don't necessarily have a problem with SMU getting in. Alabama has three SEC losses. They have three losses. Now, if you have three SEC losses, like, okay, we already know the SEC is very good, this and that. But it's the teams you lose to. I don't care if they're on the road. You lose at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was good for their standards this year. Diego Pavia was good, and he had his moments. Alabama, you guys got torched in that game. Like, you never controlled the game. You sure you made it one possession, two possessions, but you lost the game on the road at the construction site, and you didn't even it's like you didn't even show up. You didn't show up at against Boomer Sooner, against the Oklahoma Sooners. You Oklahoma beat you with 64 yards of offense, and they smoked you by 3 touchdowns in Norman. So I don't understand really the argument here. Alabama just wasn't good this year. And let's just face it. And I think honestly, there was a bunch of flawed teams in the top 12 of this playoff. Like, is Tennessee that good? I don't know. Who have they beat? Like, we could make an argument. I've gave my Penn State argument already. I understand we got to put 12 teams in. SMU was the deserving of the bunch. But like a bunch of analysts on TV said, and I'm totally going to co-sign with it. It was Greg Malkeroy. He said it after the game when he was on the call for the ACC championship game. If you make the conference championship game, there has to be some sort of a volume to that. That has to be under consideration. Like, you're in the championship game, win or lose. Alabama was not in the SEC championship. If they're in the SEC championship, we have a different story. Miami was ranked number 13th, 14th. You didn't make the championship game. If Miami makes the championship game, we have ourselves a totally different conversation right now because Clemson's not in. So that's my take on that. The committee made the right decision, a rare good decision. College Football Playoff Committee. All right, we got that out of the way. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here of the college football playoff bracket. So your top four seeds, these teams will not be playing in the first round of the playoffs. So they get an automatic bid into the quarterfinals. Your number one overall seed, the Oregon Ducks, probably the best team in America. Georgia, number 2. Boise State, number 3. And Arizona State, number 4. All four of those teams conference champions. First round of the playoffs. You had the 12 seed Clemson Tigers versus the 5 seed Texas Longhorns. The Tennessee Volunteers, the 9 seed versus the 8 seeded Ohio State Buckeyes. The 11 seeded SMU Mustangs versus the 6 seed Penn State Nittany Lions. And the 10 seed Indiana Hoosiers versus the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Let's start out with these first round games. All 4 of those first round games that we just rattled off will be played at the higher seeded college campus, which I think is great. I already said that at the start of this episode that we need that. If we could get, anytime we could get more kids in these stadiums and rambunctious environments, because let's just be honest, we play these games at Lucas Oil Stadium and Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a wine and cheese crowd. So I'm all for this personally, for the first round of the playoffs to be there. Now, I think you're going to have less upsets. That's the only downside of this because home field in college matters. It's hard to win on the road. With all that being stated, I do think you're going to get one road team that wins. We'll start from the bottom here in the first round. Indiana, Notre Dame. Indiana's been it's been fun this year. Kurt Signetti coming over from James Madison, JMU West. He's got himself this Indiana team that is he hit the portal, but they've been impressive on both sides of the ball. Everyone's been picking on them that they haven't really played anybody. They had a soft Big Ten schedule, but here they are. With all that being stated, I don't think no. I think Notre Dame has their ceiling, but offensively they'll get it done. Defensively, they're gonna shut down the Hoosiers' offense. I personally think. I think Notre Dame will win. It's in South Bend, but I do like the regionality of this matchup. Little in-state battle between Indiana and Notre Dame. I got Notre Dame there, probably by like 10 plus. SMU Penn State. Now this is the game that's very interesting to me because Penn State's at home, but you got this game. It is at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, which I think is pretty interesting. So you might have yourself a little bit of a sleepy crowd for Penn State standards. SMU has a chance to win this game. I'm not going to rule them out. If this game was at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Eastern, we might have ourselves a different story. But Penn State emotional loss, SMU happy to be there. Their up tempo offense, interested to see how Penn State handles it. Can Drew Aller? This is a big game. This James Franklin. This is the first round of the playoffs. You're in here. It's the expanded playoff format now that you're in. You're in here. You lost the Big Ten championship. Can you do it? I'm gonna go and say SMU pulls this off. I gotta pick an upset somewhere. I'm not gonna be Captain Chalk here that just goes down the line and picks all the favorites. I'll take SMU to go in to Happy Valley and pull it off. Give me the SMU Mustangs, Rhett Lashley and the crew, Brashard Smith and Kevin Jennings, and that feisty defense get it done. Tennessee and Ohio State. Pressure's on Ohio State. You have to win. You have to win this game. Is Ryan Day fired after the Michigan loss? He's lost four straight versus the Michigan Wolverines. Who knows? Most likely. I mean, you got to win the rivalry game. It's that simple. Ohio State hosts Tennessee. Now, I don't think Tennessee's really beat anybody this year. I mean, their best win is against an Alabama team that wasn't really good this year. It was wildly inconsistent on offense. They go into Buckeye Stadium. That place will be buzzing. Ohio State, those guys are playing for their lives. I mean, coach is playing for his job. Will Howard's playing for his next job because I doubt he'll be back at Ohio State next year. And those wide receivers want to redeem themselves and show what they're about. I think Ohio State will probably win that game comfortably, probably by a touchdown or more. Clemson and Texas. This is a very intriguing game. This is one of the more problem. This is probably the most intriguing first round matchup, along with SMU Penn State. But this is just one that I think Clemson and Texas. Texas hasn't looked good. We know that. But Clemson can ugly this game up to keep it close. We know their offense is going to be very limited in this game, probably with the Texas defense. And Texas hasn't looked good themselves. Dabo Sweeney always has himself a feisty defense. Just ever since he's been there. Doesn't really matter who his personnel is. This is going to be like the low scoring grudge match, and it's going to come down to who can make the play. Man, I wouldn't be shocked if this thing is like 10-10 in the fourth quarter, and Texas probably wins on a game-winning field goal or something like that. Quinn Ewers might drive him down. Maybe this is where we get all the chaos and Arch Manning comes in. It wouldn't really shock me at all, and he rallies the troops in the fourth quarter. I'll go with Texas here because I think Texas will probably go deep in this thing and then crumble when it matters most. Give me the Texas Longhorns. It is in Austin. The place will be buzzing. Give me the Longhorns by 3 to win that one there. As far as who's probably going to make a deep run, I will say this. Boise State, no one's given them a chance. They're in the quarterfinal. They got this first round. They avoided the first round. They got that bye. I think that's going to help them. They kind of get themselves a favorable matchup. They're the 3 seed. They're going to probably play that Penn State SMU game. It is that now those games will be on a neutral. If that were on the Smurf turf, obviously different story. But I think Boise State's good enough to win a playoff game. I think that will probably be their ceiling. I think they'll make it out of the quarterfinal and then run into a buzzsaw SEC team probably in the semifinal. Probably run into a team like Georgia or Notre Dame. I don't know who that opponent will be, weeks from now and at the start of the new year. But I do think Boise State is good for one game. I think Ashton Genty can rally the Broncos to a victory, and I think Maddox Matson can make enough plays to ultimately to get the job done. I don't know. I mean, Penn State and SMU, that's a favorable matchup. It's not like they have to go play Ohio State or somebody that has a juggernaut offense or a feisty defense like Texas or Clemson. So that's favorable. I mean, we could very well get ourselves an Ohio State Oregon matchup, which I don't think anyone will say no to. Ohio State can very easily beat Oregon. Quite honestly, it was a 3-point game at Eugene in the regular season. Arizona State, I mean, I think people are just going to keep continuing to write them off. I hate to say it. I think the winner of that Clemson Texas first round matchup, I think, will be Arizona State. So I think that team, if you're looking for some value, that's the team that winner of the Clemson Texas matchup is probably going to go on a run to the semifinal or who knows, maybe even the championship game. But man, I mean, if you get Ohio State, Oregon, I mean, I can make a case for Ohio State. I mean, like we said, it was a very close game. Georgia, we got to pay attention to the quarterback situation there and the injury of Carson Beck. I don't know. I think I probably you have to like Oregon's chances in this thing, but I mean, you can make a case for a bunch of teams here. But some of these teams are flawed, like the first, like teams that are playing in the first round. Like there is a clear, okay, you got yourself a ceiling. But if I had to make a pick right now, I'm going to say Oregon, and quite honestly, that could change by the end of the first round, depending on what the path looks like. But we'll we'll take this week by week. We'll figure it out. But I can't wait to see how these teams play in this new playoff because we really haven't seen it before. A playoff matchup in at these home fields. New teams like an SMU that have never been here before. Boise State's been to Fiesta Bowls before, but not of this magnitude, I would say. They got a legit. I mean, they're two game. You win 2 games, Boise State, you're in a national championship game. And there's just some new teams in here, like in Indiana, that could maybe shock the world. Not that I think they will, but there's always that case. In Arizona State, you can make the same argument for. So this is gonna be a whole lot of fun. I can't wait to monitor it. Overall, just a great college football regular season. Loved keeping up with everybody. Loved keeping up with San Jose State. They had themselves a great season. We're gonna come back and talk San Jose State on a separate episode. We'll talk about their season from start to finish, all the roller coasters ride. We'll kind of do a year in review. They still have their bowl game, the Hawaii Bowl played on Christmas Eve versus the South Florida Bulls. So obviously, there's gonna be some transfer portal stuff. Some guys won't be playing. We'll give all the details. We'll be doing a game preview. We'll come and just talk San Jose State football from start to finish there. But we had to come on and talk some big picture college football as well because this playoff is a whole lot of fun. The regular season was a whole lot of fun, and we can't wait to see how this whole thing unfolds. So keep it locked in here on the Sports Sentiment. If you're listening to on the audio side, you want to check out the YouTube channel. That's at the Sports Sentiment on YouTube.com. To all of our folks on YouTube that tune in always. Thanks for checking it out. Be sure to smash that like button. That helps us out a lot. And hey, football season's winding down. Basketball season already is underway, but Now we'll really start to get into just all the good stuff in the Mountain West for college hoops, and we'll of course we'll even talk the top 25 stuff in the mid majors as well. So we're gonna have a whole lot of more guests come basketball season. We got a whole lot of more exciting stuff planned as we get closer to March and then the NCAA tournament. So can't for all of that to unfold. But once again, I am your host Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.